Put salt on the doorstep of a new house, and no evil can enter. Mama taught me to lie. Some would say that Mama went to jail in Carling, New York because of lies, but we had other ideas. We knew the truth came in different varieties and that most people had a favorite, something with untruth. Anyone could decide what to call a lie, so sometimes there'd be a misunderstanding. Mama made claims to be clairvoyant, able to see clearly what was unseen by everyone else. She had what she called a sensitive way with the spirit world. I was her assistant. We offered services that only we could perform. Mama cultivated her talents to help people seek solace or relief from a predicament. When a gentleman, for instance, misplaced a gold watch and offered a reward for its recovery, Mama's psychic ability was almost certain to detect the missing object, particularly when her bellowing smile and her nibble fingers had caused the misplacement to begin with, and I had selected the discover site. When the gentleman reclaimed his property, we were handsomely paid, and everyone was content, until an accident of falter timing led to a watch being observed in our possession. That day in Carling, I was 15. I watched Mama being dragged away by the police with her stockings torn, her feet scrambling to touch the ground. I saw her hat flung to the pavement, with the ostrich feathers snapped under a boot. I wanted to howl and kick somebody. That sickening scene played over and over in front of my eyes, like at the moving pictures, with the pianist gone home. And while Mama languished for 2 days and nights in the stone cellar of that Carling police station behind a wall of iron mesh, I was confined to the sheriff's home. The sheriff's wife was more formidable jailer than any of the young men with pistols who were watching over Mama. We had villains in here before, Miss Annie Gray. She jabbed her fingers at me, but never one so young, nor unrepentant. Well, what was I supposed to be repenting for? We didn't want the watch. We wanted the money for its recovery, and we never got that. So how could we repent? You sit right there and read aloud from the good book. Your mother has some nerve with her claim to see into the future. No one but the good Lord can say what awaits us. I know what awaits you, young lady. You will read without moving from the moment you finish your breakfast until I put supper on the table tonight. At first, I didn't think it was much of a punishment. There are some great moments of drama in the Bible, storms, miracles, plenty of evil doing, and heroic characters. And God divided the light from darkness. I thundered, waving my fist into the air. And God called light day, and he called the night dark. But the sheriff's wife didn't want my interpretation. She wanted the pity, and she wanted it plain. Don't you get fanciful, and don't you rest. I had no wish to repeat that experience as long as I lived. I chose to have an epic seizure at the same moment that Mama agreed to marry her guard. And so between us, we negotiated our freedom. Luckily, Mama prided herself on always being prepared for trouble. Our savings were nearly arranged in the false bottom of our trunk and hadn't been disturbed by the rude officers who had searched our belongings. We left town the very hour Mama was released, and we swore not to repeat our errors. Mama said soon we would have enough money to buy a home of our own. She said we would settle down just as I'd been begging for, so long as I could remember. We arrived in Hawley feeling breathless, as if we'd run all the way from Carling in our fine leather high cuts instead of sitting in a first-class compartment with a thermos of chamomile tea and a 2-pound box of coconut maroons. We stayed in Hawley just long enough to come up with a new twist of our old game. One of our strength is your sweet and innocent face, said Mama. We'll take it one step further and turn you into a dim-witted angel. You will be chucked over, then ignored by a heartless woman who will think only of themselves. This will put you in an excellent position for eavesdropping. Mama was sharp, no mistake about that. She was a fake as far as hearing from the dead, or even seeing the outcome of a situation ahead of time, but she had a sensitive way about her. When required professionally, she was a master at drawing out secrets. With a little background information, she easily appeared to see straight into the hearts of forlorn and desperate seekers, usually women who spent their heaps of money to hear the advice of a stranger. And Mama was so pretty, people tended to trust her without thinking about it. So in Hawley, I sat for hours holding Mama's mirror with a tortoiseshell handle. I perfected the ability to cross one eye while my mouth stayed open. I breathed out with a faint wheeze so that my lips dried up or even crusted. Once in a while, I'd add a twitch. If anyone had looked through the window, they would have heard Mama school me. Get rid of that smart glint in your eyes and let your lip gape. It made me thirsty having my tongue lolled out. Try honking through your nose when you laugh. That will give your mouth a rest. I experimented the streets of Hawley. People would take a first look at me and shiver with disgust. They'd look again and think, oh, the poor thing. Thank heaven she's not mine. And then they'd ignore me, just as Mama predicted, out of politeness maybe, or embarrassment. That was the moment I could go to work. While in disguise, I planned to gather gossip and bring it home to Mama. She would put it to use in little ways, giving it back to the very same people, only shaped differently and in exchange for money, lots of money. Over time, we moved on to Peach Hill towards the end of the summer to start fresh. The days were still hot, and I wish we could go closer to the shore of the Finger Lakes, but Mama said resort towns attract more sophisticated people. We were better off in Nowhere, New York. There was not a peach tree in sight. There was a hill, though, dotted with fancy houses that might have a peach tree before they had swimming pools and rose gardens. Below the hill, it was an ordinary town like the all the others we ever stayed in. Big enough for a train station, a church, and a cinema, but small enough to see most of it during the evening stroll. The edge of the town wasn't an edge so much as a fade away, with a few more tumble down houses before the farm and field began in earnest. I felt shivers that night. In spite of it being August, it was pretty here, and I wondered if this would be the place where our savings would add up high enough to find a nest. We abandoned most of our possessions in Carling, so we had only the trunk and a few bundles to carry from the taxi cab into our new home. Furnished rooms at 62 Needle Street. Look there, Mama whispered. The curtain is quivering at number 59 across the road. I slid my tongue out and let my eyes drip. Put the sign before you heat the kettle. Put up the sign before you heat the kettle, Annie, said Mama. We'll have customers by nightfall tomorrow. It never took long for word of arrival to flutter around a town like a flock of birds. People might scorn us in public, but nearly everyone had a reason to seek us out on the quiet. Our rooms were on the ground floor just off the main square where people could find us easily. It wasn't showy. We didn't want anyone feeling nervous. But we disguised it up enough to suggest that our talents were worth the investment. We took care setting up the front room where Mama received company. We were lucky that the room provided a red cut velvet armchair for the customer and a smaller wooden one for Mama. We hired a polished table to place in between and the one that would be enlarged could be enlarged as needed. When we were hosting what Mama referred as a calling, we could see it as the occasional demand. By day, and ivory lace curtains damped the light almost like a shampoo. The sign in the window, lettered in gold script, announced Madam Katerina, spiritual advisor. Mama's circulars claimed that we had gypsy's blood, but our Taunton skin and black hair were really thanks to her grandmother, a Mexican maid in her grandfather's house. Saying gypsy meant more to the customer, that was all, making them think we were wanderlust and fortune tellers came naturally. Peach Hill was our 8th town, Mama's and mine. If you couldn't calculate the 100 places we stayed 3 nights each while we worked with Lenny's famous fun hair. We joined Lenny when I was maybe 4 or 5. When I was about 9, the United States joined the Great War and people had better things to do with their money than spend it on fun. Lenny closed the shop and we were forced to make our own fortune. We moved a few times in the beginning, but for most of the war we lived in Declan, where the factory made buttons for uniforms. That place was filled with sad, lonely wives working on the assembly line and praying that their gleaming buttons would not be blown off the chests of distant husbands. It was in Declan where we first began to prosper. All those funerals were not just because of the war, but also because of the great influenza epidemic where there was likely not a family in town or anywhere else who did not release the sword through that deadly illness. But it was mainly of the young men gone to be soldiers who brought us the cleanliness. I beg you, on my knees, a lady would say as soon as the door opened. Read my palm. Look at the cards. Pour out the tea leaves. Whatever it takes to tell me that my David or Joe or Marco or Terence is still alive. Not hearing from overseas for 2 weeks or months could drive a woman crazy. Mama had to be careful about her word and on those occasions, wanting a return visit or the outcome. Ooh, she murmured. I'm seeing a place of great darkness and confusion. Your loved one needs you to be strong and patient. When bad news came, it was no surprise that people hurried back to our parlor. The word had a positive outcome for Mama and me, aside from the stomping out the wicked trains overseas who threatened peace and liberty. It left thousands of mothers and sweethearts and wives aching to connect with their lost boys now dwelling on the other side. Mama piled her trades, and we learned an important lesson. Heartbreak is very good for business.